Hey guys, today I thought I'd make a speed paint commentary over one of my more recent paintings. So you can see that I've already done the basic sketch. It's gonna be a landscape piece featuring like two pointy mountains in the distance, and in the foreground there's gonna be a flower bed and some trees off to the left with some other smaller mountains on the right side. In the middle, it's gonna be just some very wide or open fields with a lake in the middle. So what I'm gonna do with the lake later is to add some reflections to make the scene just a little bit more interesting. Right now you can see that I'm just blocking in the main colors into the scene. I just want to get a feel of what color combinations work and what doesn't. So at the top right, you can see that I have two little arrows showing where the sunlight is going to be coming in from. The whole middle part of the landscape is going to be pretty illuminated, but the areas in the foreground and the trees on the left is going to be pretty dark. So right now in this stage, I'm just mostly focusing on getting all the basic colors in. I'm not too worried about the exact hues because I'll just be using the color balance to kind of fine-tune that a little later on. At this point, I have already blocked in most of the bigger shapes. I still have the trees on the left, which I'm clearly procrastinating right now. It's not the easiest part of the whole scene. Just adding in some trees in the middle, you can see here. Just using a round brush to add in some round shapes to just give a suggestion of trees. Now I'm adding a little bit more detail to make the whole scene look a little bit more realistic. Just some reflections in the lake, some shadows in the fields, a little bit more trees and shadows where they should be. And finally I start working on the trees on the left. When it comes to trees, I like to start off by drawing in the tree trunk and the branches, and then I'll add the leaves later on. It just gives me a better idea of where clumps of leaves are gonna go later on, because I found that if I just randomly, brush on some leaves, the trees doesn't end up looking as realistic as they should be. After working on the trees a little bit, I added in some flower shapes in the foreground. This is gonna be the flower bed. Right now it's a little simple, but I'll be adding it a little bit more detail later. For now, it's just there to fill in the composition and give me a general feel of what the whole completed scene is gonna look like. Some brushwork here to give a bit of texture to the mountains on the right side. Now I'm back again working on the trees. I'm just cleaning up the shapes a little bit. I realized that they are just a bit too thick, so I just need to, erase some of the tree trunks and branches to make them look a little bit more simple and clean. Yeah, I know that a lot of this work can be avoided by just doing it right the first time. Okay, so now the trees look so much better than before. So you can see here I just got bored of the trees and I'm moving to this little cliff here and adding in some texture. Alright, now that I'm done with the cliff, I'll be doing the leaves for the trees. I'm using a more rough brush here and I'm painting on a layer that's behind all the tree trunks and branches. When it comes to trees, I really like to use two layers for the leaves, one behind and one in front. So on the behind layer, I mostly use a darker value, and for the front layer, I'll start to layer in some of the brighter leaf green colors. One thing you might notice is that I don't cover the whole area with leaves, and I leave out just some empty spaces where the light can kind of shine through all these little blue spots. You can also sometimes see the tree branches poking through the leaves. That's because I use the 2 layers, and it helps to sell the whole tree appearance. Alright, at this point I've blocked in most of the major components of the scene, and pretty soon you're gonna see me start doing some minor editing, just some color correction and shifting the color balance and whatnot to get a more satisfying color combination. Here you can see that I'm adding a 0 saturation adjustment layer just so that I can easily check my values by turning it on and off. Now I'm putting more work into the mid-ground area. You can see me just fleshing out the tree shapes, just adding in some cones or triangles just to give them a bit more form. I'm basically using the same technique for all of the clumps of trees, the ones in the foreground and the ones in the background. So at this point, the major components of the image are already complete. Most of the work from here on is just going to be adding more detail and just some fine-tuning and corrections. Now I'm doing some work on the mountains in the distance. I'm changing the way the snowy areas sit on the mountain to better fit the current perspective of the image. Also here you see me just briefly switch the image into black and white mode just to check my values on the mountains. And now I'm moving on to work on the buildings that's closer to us. Right now you can obviously see that they are much too bright. Really need to make them a bit darker to fit into the scene a bit more. There you see me lowering the saturation and increasing the value of the buildings just to make sure that they don't stand out too much. Alright, so now it's time to figure out what to do with the foreground area. I'm just adding a bit of texture using this foliage stamp brush. It's the default foliage brush that comes with Studio Paint. Now you see me experimenting with a couple of different brushes. My goal here is to get a grassy texture without having it looking too artificial or repetitive. Alright, so I'm kinda happy with the grass for now. I'm using some brighter colors to draw in some of the flowers that I planned earlier. I'm using the lasso tool to just get some cleaner edges, and after just drawing a few flowers, I just copy paste and transform them until I fill out the whole flower bed. Now that I have the shapes of the flowers down, I can just lock the transparency and color them in. Some more copy pasting and value adjustment. I'm using the soft light blending mode and soft brush to make more gradual changes in the shadow and values of the flowers. Here I'm just doing a bit more minor adjustments and cleaning up the rough edges on each of these flowers. I actually spent quite a lot of time on these flowers to make them look good since they're right in the foreground. Alright, so there's really not much to say from this point forward. I'm just doing more fine tuning and just polishing the rest of the image. And I end the painting with just a few more color edits. So I'll just leave you to enjoy the rest of the time lapse.